continue. We have a tight schedule. So next up, we have two guys from Rovio, Jonas Palmgren and Markus Tuppurainen from their perspective. So let's give them a hand.
Just a bit longer. Okay, now it's working. Great.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome everyone to the presentation is about Bad Piggies and it's about the production of Bad Piggies and the post-mortem from more of the design perspective, because now we have two designers of the game talking here. And I'm Jonas Palmgren, senior game designer from Rovio. And I was supposed to do this alone, but luckily we got Markus Tuppurainen returning from vacation, who is actually was the lead designer on the project originally and whose original concept the whole game was. And let's see the agenda. First we'll have an introduction to the game. Then we'll talk about the beginnings, how it all started and pieces started falling together, and then the actual prototyping and the initial launch. Finally, the lessons we learned from the game. So yes, introduced Markus and then about Rovio in the audience who hasn't heard of Rovio. So, okay, I'll keep this really brief. We have 4 offices currently, and we have 4 internal game studios. We have the Espoo office, where we have 2 studios, Studio Forge, from where we are. Then we have Studio Wildfire. Then we have an office in Tampere, and they have their own game studio there. Then in Stockholm we have our own game studio, and then in Shanghai we have the 4th office. And a bit about Studio Forge. We have these identities for each internal studio, and Studio Forge, it's all about, of course, fun games, because we're making games with superb value for all audiences. That's a bit of an old one, but already familiar from the original Angry Birds game, that we want to really have superb production values for the price that we're selling the games, and we want to keep them constantly updated and offer paid for the game a lot of updates and content in the future also.
So games as services.
Yes, and all of our games, we want them to have a real skill layer. Of course, our target audience is also very much the casual audience, but we want the games to have a real skill layer that can cater to the more experienced gamers. Like if you take Angry Birds or Bad Piggies, for example, we have the star system, so it's easy to pass the levels with 1 star, but then if you want that extra challenge, you can go for the 3 stars. And we're constantly working on new cool stuff, and the reason why I'm telling you this is because we're hiring. And let's start with a little video so you guys get to see what it is like to work at Rovio, and also how it was making the Bad Piggies. Or not. But of course we're missing the audio. Can we? Yeah. Sorry about this. And 3rd try. There we go. Or not.
project redefines.
Tech guys. Is it? Oh.
This is where ambition and
Hey, I'm going to. Yeah, it should work. Okay. If you're interested, you can also find it from the interwebs. So let's continue. I won't take more of your time with. It's a physics-based puzzle driving game where you use these modules to first construct your vehicle, and then you get to operate it to solve snack-sized small puzzles. Is the original on it, and as well as being the lead designer on the project, he was also the lead artist. So
I made 95% of the graphics in this game.
So you were quite busy then. Then we had Kari Perho, QA lead, Marco Rapino, lead programmer, Mauricio Holando, senior programmer, Peter Urbanix, who's there. Hi, Peter. Designer as the producer, who is now the head of Studio 4, and Mika Virpio, lead gameplay programmer. And the game's features. We had 4 episodes, 120 levels. Actually, we have more levels now, plus 30 challenge levels. 7 racing levels, it's 8 now, and we have all sandbox levels. I'll tell you more about those features as we go on. But how did the Bad Piggies game come to be? It's for a long time at Rovio we had wanted to make a game for the piggies, and also the fans had been asking for that. And it seemed that many people also found it easier to identify with the piggies than it was with the birds. And do you want to tell something to the audience about the?
I guess I could tell about the inspiration for the gameplay.
Yeah.
It's not the first of its kind. You build something and you have a separate gameplay. And attaching wheels and such. And I found thing, but maybe a bit hardcore. You bend the lines and whatnot. And also, you couldn't make any flying machine. Big minus for me. That's why it took several weeks, and I came up with that's been used before construction. And the fantastic contraption had this perpetual mode that you just put it in place and they start rotating. But engines, or having the pig as the power source for the engine or the wheels at first, which could be upgraded. Someone also mentioned Banjo and Kazooie nuts and bolts at some point. I hadn't played it before. I played it while the game was in production, which was a 3D version. And they had handled the building so that there was a huge list of menus and all the items were described as a word. And so you had a wheel, or left wheel and a right wheel, or something like this. And a perfect way to kill the buzz for building something. You had to try it first and see if this was what I wanted and then change it again.
Yeah, and Markus had this idea for a long time, and it started to make sense when he pitched it, because we know that the pigs, they are builders. In the Angry Birds series, they build castles, all kinds of constructions, but we've also seen them driving different kinds of vehicles in Angry Birds, and they are comical. If you played Bad Piggies, you know that it's actually, at least when you start the game, it's a lot of fun to fail when you see the pigs failing. And that's an important part of the fun in the game.
If you have noticed, there's actually no fail screen in the game. Fail. Even if the machine crashes somewhere, it's just fun. Then you can stop.
So it isn't punished that much, and it can also be seen as rewarding when you fail, and in some of the you can see that failing a lot make different kind of contraptions that are just crash. And they want the eggs, so of course the eggs were a part of the story in Bad Piggies too. And this explains how ready the vision was in your mind, because this is actually the first initial concept mock-up of the game, and if you've played it, you can see that it looks almost like the final product.
That's not entirely true. I did pitch the game in the previous company I worked for, but at the time I had only a pencil sketch to go with it, and people weren't too happy with it. So I took it back the next time. I tried to make it look as final as possible, and actually these part graphics are used in the final game.
So the pigs were a perfect pair for the concept.
And with these two images, people would already see what the game was about. Building something and then piloting that device into the goal. And you could kind of feel the fun.
Drawing of gameplay and different kinds of possibilities. And, prototype. Does it fly? What is fun? Easy for players to understand how it works. So, explode. No. How we to act, because of course we wouldn't ultra realistic, but we wanted to have something that is fun to play. You can kind of predict, you know how it works, but there was quite a lot of tweaking. And then of course the Bad Piggy. I'll show you. This is the first prototype that was game in. It was done in Unity. You can see the resemblance with the...
This is a bit sped up, so yeah, it's not the actual speed.
So you can see that there, in the first prototype, there were already some graphics that ended up in the final game.
And the first prototype, it took about 2 weeks to find out that this was actually a fun game. And since it was done in Unity and it was my first Unity experience, it was like an eye-opener. You can actually make games like this. Wow. And from the designer perspective, this was something new. Everything could be handled from the same editor. So.
And then a secondary, can we actually make a fun game out of it? And you can tell us more about this, the scoring and starring, because as you know, in Angry Birds, there's the scoring, and related to the score that you get a number of stars from 1 to 3, depending on how well you did.
So the company had already published 3 Angry Birds games. All of them had 3-star system and scoring, so there was a lot of legacy to carry this same system to Bad Piggies as well. Of those, the game is totally... There there was idea of putting some collectibles on the way, but only thing that did was limit the players' way of completing the level. Then you would actually have to do exactly the same thing we wanted them to do, and the fun was out of the window. So we forgot about collecting anything. Then we realized maybe we can do the 3-starring without any score, and that took about 4 to 6 weeks to figure out how. Do we want to make it so that you have to land perfectly and finally that when you pass the level you get the first star. Options. If you collect something on the way and then reach the goal, you may get a star. If you complete the level without an essential part, without the wheel or something, you get the star. And those 5 different options of these, and they vary throughout the levels.
Yeah, also I forgot to mention in the beginning, if you have any questions at any point, feel free to interrupt us and just raise your hand and we'll try to answer it. Yeah. Flight controls.
Sorry. How many people were involved making the initial prototype? There was only 2, 1 programmer and myself.
So you as...
I think it was still... Well, at that point we already had the team for it, so it was a total of 6 people who made the game from the prototype phase to the final productions. And in the prototype phase, the controls were actually so that you pushed the contraption itself. If there was a bellows in the contraption, you pushed the bellows. But once, of course, we added the camera zoom so that you can see more of the area. When you go faster, everything goes so small that you can't hit them anymore. So we added the buttons in the bottom row where you can control the things. Go ahead. What platform we used in the prototyping phase? I think iPad. We did also try it on iPhone and see that it could be played with that, and that was important because I think most of the sales still come from the iPhone.
And then let's talk about the vehicle design a bit. The closed modular system, which is, we had simple modular pieces with one clear functionality. So it's something that you already know when you see it for the first time. You have an idea how it could work in a physical world. And then allowing players to put those, attach those to each other in any way they wanted. There was still a lot of variety and discovery involved, and all of the final creations that the vehicles that you created, you could already know once you had seen, because the pieces, modules were introduced one by one, you could actually know how it functions. And we had 2 modes, the story mode, which is also used, of course, to introduce all these different functions, different modules to the player.
And this also is legacy from Angry Birds, where there's like small levels, and we have level buttons, like 30 of them in a row. This is kind of like, in a way, a compromise due to the schedule, tight schedule, that we had to come up with these short levels. The original, more like the sandboxes are in the game right now. And sandboxes are probably the thing that keeps the game in the
small levels a lot, because they're like,
didn't do them for nothing then.
Yes, yes. And you have the clear challenges. It's a small level that you can you see the objectives. You have a limited amount of the parts that you've unlocked, so it keeps it compact. And then there's the sandbox, where there are huge levels filled with star boxes that you need to collect, and you can't use just vehicle to collect them all, but you have to experiment a lot in order to complete them.
And as previously mentioned, schedule and compromises, this almost didn't happen. Our producers told us not to do it because we don't have the time, but we did it in secret.
So you guys implemented it, and then everyone actually realized that it's a great feature. But as you can see, it would not be the most approachable thing for really casual players, because you have unlocked a huge pile of parts that you can use, so that you don't really know where to start from.
You can limit the difficulty by making the building grid smaller in the short levels, and people don't feel so threatened or overcome by the small grid. But when you see this, you start thinking, no, this is too complex, I can't do it, especially someone who hasn't played a lot. So.
And it's a great thing we ended up with the sandbox mode too, because it has been the most important part to actually get a community around the game. And especially now later on, when we integrated every play, where the players can easily record their vehicles and their runs and upload them. It's amazing to see how in such imaginative ways people can use the vehicle editor. So the core differences between the two modes: we have the story mode with really constrained scenarios and tight control over the content, and then we have the free sandbox play with a lot of unforeseeable results. And one thing that you could see and feel was that the QA was quite heavy because of the sandbox, because constrained scenarios, you have a limited set of the vehicle, of the part modules that you can put together. It's easy to test in small levels, while the sandbox level, we still find all kinds of really cool bugs in uploaded by the players that haven't been discovered by the QA. And this visualizes how extremely tight the production schedule really was. That the proto got greenlit in May, and already 2 weeks after that, all the gadgets were frozen. Of course, they were still tweaked after that, but they were so ready that soon after that, the level creation could start, and the level designers could start running wild, and really see what kind of levels were fun and what wasn't too much fun. And there were also vacations in there. Someone had.
Someone had them, someone didn't. Sitting on 2 seats, being the designer and the artist, I can tell I wasn't on a vacation.
In a way, it's understandable that the producers were reluctant at first to add all kinds of cool modes.
Nothing that can't be fixed with long hours.
Yes. Levels where the players can race and actually we had the high score tables for the first time added to the game, where the players can see who can reach the goal the fastest. And then we had Field of Dreams as an IAP in-app purchase. It was in the first update already, yes. We added 4 new gadgets, and then in the latest update, to like broaden the monetization options also, we introduced consumables. I'll talk about them a bit later, but as non-evilly as possible. So we added this feature where you can collect desserts from the levels, which keep spawning, which you can feed to the king pig, who will grant you the consumables also. So you don't necessarily need to use IAPs and spend money to get the gameplay with the consumables. Then post-launch issues and fixes. Number 1, the biggest issue probably has been that the difficulty curve was too steep. And we've been trying to fix it in most of the updates that we've put out by making certain progress blockers, which we've seen from the analytics that people drop somewhere and can't complete the level, to make them easier. Also, now that we added the Rise and Swine episode, we actually didn't put it as the last of the list in episodes, but we inserted as the new second episode, so between the initial first and second episodes, to make the difficulty curve not so steep. When we introduced the consumables, we decided to change the basic mechanic who used to be consumable to a permanent purchase. So for 89 cents, you get the basic vehicle if you want for all the levels, so you don't have to build it to be able to pass it. And we added this new super mechanic consumable because many of the later levels, for example, you can play in various different ways. So the super mechanic actually gives you a selection of vehicles that make sure that you can reach the 3 stars without vehicles, because from the data we've gathered, there's a lot of players who actually dislike the building part, which to me is the most fun, maybe. But for some reason, there are a lot of those players that don't want to build the vehicle. They just want to operate it. So the super mechanic was great for that. And also then the other consumables, we introduced them to help the players. So you have, for example, super glue, which will make your vehicle almost indestructible, which is really helpful in these levels where you fly in a cavern. And from the recent polls, we've seen that they have been very well received. People have liked them and are actually using them a lot. Then issue number 2. Many players had a hard time understanding all the tutorial pages since we didn't use any text. And later on, the tutorials have been tweaked, but the issue still remains to some extent. And at least in retrospect, I myself would have used text in help, especially in a game as complex as Bad Piggies. You have a lot of different kinds of modules which work in different ways and have different states, so it would have been so much easier.
This was also part of the legacy from the Angry Birds games, where no text was used. So we're trying to continue on the same path.
Yes, in a way it's cheap. You don't have to localize, but in the end it might not be the best way to go if people don't understand how to play your game.
If you come from the graphic design background, you know that for the fact only like a symbol or icon that works for everybody is the sign for men and women's toilet. Everything else is kind of ambiguous.
Issue 3. I don't know if it wasn't really an issue with the prototype as how it was launched, but later on we realized that there could have been ways to have it monetized better and not really affect the game or making it in any way worse, at least. And yeah, we fixed it with these consumables that we introduced in the latest update. But as I said earlier, you can also, we added this feature where you can collect certs. So it's very non-evil. You get to use a lot of consumables even if you don't want to spend any money. So the player never really has or feels forced that that the game is too hard. They are forced to make these purchases. And but because of the nature of the game, it's a physics-based puzzle game where you have many different objectives, different types of objectives for each level. So it was very hard to come up with generally helpful consumables. So rather, we tried to come up with the funniest that would make the game even more enjoyable to people, and also that people could use in the sandbox levels, because they are recording their own runs and how they make vehicles, and then they upload them to let them play with those and see what happens. So yeah, basically went for making the game more fun instead of just making it easier using the consumables. Lessons learned. if you're targeting the casual audience, test the difficulty, and if you're unsure, make it easier.
Don't overestimate people.
Don't overestimate people, yes. But of course, we also need hardcore games, and well, it depends on the audience, but very casual audiences, it should be very easy. Not in the end, but it should, the difficulty curve should be very gentle. Also, the Roadhogs, the new racing mode that we introduced, it was not a huge hit, and it was probably because it wasn't, it didn't suit the nature of the game, like the core of the game, perfectly. There was already enough for players with the features and modes that they had. And we should have maybe concentrated a bit more on just putting out new gadgets that the players could use in imaginative ways, and new levels and sandboxes that player enjoyed. They didn't necessarily need for a new racing mode. But we put it there to have the leaderboards for the players to compete with, but yeah, not a huge hit. As I said already, game was well-rounded and compact package in it. So the gadgets have been a hit. Whenever there's an update where we add a new gadget, people love it. And it doesn't take long until the net is filled with videos of people using the gadgets in their contraptions. And nail all the monetization options and don't make them evil, or, yeah, I suggest you don't make them evil, but depends on what you're after. But anyways, these days, it's also easy to have the monetization designed so that it is not evil and it does not put people off, but gives them more options if they are willing to.
But the game itself doesn't really sit in the free-to-play model, and it wasn't designed to be one. And all the monetization elements came afterwards.
That's it. Questions and maybe also answers.
When you went to Rovio to pitch this game idea, were you at all worried that you're going to go to pitch the idea and then they say, oh, we don't like it, but then 6 months later you see the game in App Store?
Actually, I was already working at Rovio at the time when I pitched it. But I guess that's always a possibility. You never know.
How did you get the initial starting money?
Sorry?
How did you get the initial starting money?
Rovio.
Yeah,
I think
because we pitched it internally, and then when we got the green light for the production, it was.
Can I ask
so.
Where Rovio started to get the first money? Was it in a closet development?
I'm not sure, but I think it's been always in like a family ownership. So someone in the near family provided the support.
Cool. No more questions.
Okay, here's one. So if you want to ask more questions, like hold your hand up and wait for the mic.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were hiring. I mean, what kind of people are you hiring? Programmers, graphics artists, people that sell the game?
You should check the web page for all the
There's
for the list of
probably 100 different positions. So you probably can find something that suits you.
Okay, so it's not like when you had like 2012 last year's summer when there's like enormous amount of like positions and there's like an even more enormous amount of people applying to them, and you had like multi-stage interview process. And you basically just so like basically got pick like the cream or the crop.
It's hard to say.
I mean,
We're just designers.
I remember hearing, it's like it's 3 stages or something, and I applied and didn't even get past the first one.
Yeah, it didn't happen when I was applying. I was the 17th employee at the time, so.
But you should definitely check the web page.
So there was one question here.
So you used the
I guess it's working.
okay. Unity in prototyping that made the game your own engine.
It was actually due to the tight schedule. It was finished on top of the original prototype, which was already made well enough so that it could be done.
Okay, so you used Unity?
Yes.
Okay. Second question, how many downloads have you got, and what about the revenue?
I don't know if this is public information.
Yeah, I don't know what
The number of the birds has been well publicized, and maybe for the same reason, because the bad piggies can't reach 1 billion probably, it hasn't been said in the public. But it's quite high.
It's done well.
Yeah.
Do you have a plan to like do something to draw attention to the game, because it's quite different now than it was when it was first launched, for the people who tried it then and then said, okay, no sandbox or something, and did it. Do you have some kind of plan to like launch a version 2 or something like that?
Yeah, I don't know what the marketing guys have planned for it, at least, but
I think currently it's free, so if you don't have it, go get it.
and buy the power-ups. Cool. Here.
So you mentioned you used the Unity Asset Store. Can you mention any assets you used from there?
We should have Mauri here. Do you know?
Yeah, we don't have any of the programmers who would know this better. I think there was one in the front row.
Any more questions? Okay. Well then,
We
thank you very much.